It began with a smile that looked completely harmless, but behind that smile hid a mind capable of unspeakable darkness. A man who walked among friends, classmates, and strangers like anyone else. A man who secretly hunted human beings. His name was Ted Bundy, and for years no one could imagine the truth about him. The streets of America in the 1970s felt safe, quiet, and ordinary. Young women walked through college campuses without fear. Neighborhoods slept peacefully under streetlights. But something terrible was moving through the dark. It moved quietly and patiently like a shadow, and it was wearing the face of a charming young man. To understand this story, we must go back to the beginning, long before the headlines in the courtrooms, long before the nation knew his name. This story begins with a boy who grew up surrounded by secrets. Ted Bundy was born in 1946. His childhood was filled with confusion about who his real family was. For years, he believed his grandparents were his parents, and he believed his mother was his sister. That secret would shape his life in ways no one could see. Friends later said he was a quiet child. He often kept his thoughts to himself. But some stories from his childhood were strange. One family member said they once woke up surrounded by knives placed around them by young Ted. It was a moment that felt like a warning of something dark. As he grew older, Ted learned how to hide his true self. He became polite, confident, and charming. People liked him immediately. He was handsome, smart, and well-spoken. No one saw the dark fantasies growing in his mind. During his teenage years, Ted spent long hours alone. He became obsessed with violent images and disturbing ideas. These thoughts slowly shaped his view of the world. By the time he reached college, he had perfected his mask. He studied law and politics. He volunteered for political campaigns. He even worked at a suicide hotline, helping people in crisis. The people who worked with him described him as kind and responsible. No one could believe what he was capable of. In 1974, the first shadows began to appear. Young women started disappearing without a trace. They vanished from college campuses. They vanished from parking lots. They vanished from quiet streets. Police were confused and frightened. There was no clear suspect. There were no obvious connections, only a growing number of missing persons cases. One of the first known victims was a young college student. She was smart, kind, and full of dreams. Her friends said she had a bright future ahead. But one night, she simply never came home. Her family waited by the phone for days, each hour filled with hope and fear. But the call they were waiting for never came. A few weeks later, another young woman disappeared. Then another, and another. A pattern was beginning to emerge. Witnesses reported seeing a strange man approach women. He was handsome and polite. Sometimes he pretended to have a broken arm. Sometimes he asked for help with his car. His name, he said, was Ted. This small detail would later become crucial. Police began searching for a man named Ted, but they had no idea just how close he was. While investigators were searching for a monster, Ted Bundy was walking freely among them. He attended classes, he went on dates, he laughed with friends, all while hiding a terrifying secret. His double life was becoming more dangerous, and his crimes were about to become even more shocking, because soon the killer would make a mistake, a small detail that would start to unravel everything. And when the truth finally emerged, it would shock the entire world, because the monster they were hunting was someone they thought they knew. The summer air felt normal, but a predator was moving through it. Police reports continued to pile up on desks across multiple states. Each report described a young woman who had suddenly disappeared. The locations were different, but the fear was the same. College campuses that once felt safe now felt uncertain. Friends began walking in groups after dark. Parents called their daughters more often. Something terrible was happening, but no one knew who was responsible. At the center of this growing mystery was a man named Ted Bundy, but at that time, his name meant nothing to investigators. Witnesses kept repeating the same details: a polite man with a friendly voice approaching women. Sometimes he wore a cast or used crutches. Sometimes he asked for help carrying books. He always appeared helpless and trustworthy. And that was his most powerful weapon. Many victims were last seen helping a man who looked injured. By the time anyone realized something was wrong, it was too late. The disappearances continued throughout 1974. Police were dealing with a case that did not make sense. Each crime scene had very little evidence. There were almost no witnesses, and the killer seemed to vanish into thin air every time. Investigators started to fear they were dealing with a serial killer, but at that time, the term was still new and poorly understood. Fear spread across college towns. Students talked quietly about a strange man named Ted. Some said they had seen him before. Others remembered helping a man with a broken arm. But the clues still did not lead to a clear suspect. While police were searching for him, Bundy continued his normal life. He attended classes and social events. He smiled and talked like any ordinary person. Inside his mind, however, the darkness was growing stronger. He began traveling farther to commit his crimes. This made it even harder for police to connect the cases. Different states were investigating different disappearances, but they did not yet realize they were hunting the same man. Then something happened that would change everything. A witness saw a woman enter a car with a stranger. The car was described as a light-colored Volkswagen Beetle. This detail would become very important because Ted Bundy owned a car just like that. Still, at this point, his name was not on any police list. The killer continued moving through cities like a ghost. Another victim disappeared from a park. Friends said she was last seen talking to a man named Ted. This small detail was reported to police. Suddenly, the name Ted appeared in multiple reports. Investigators started looking for a man named Ted with a Volkswagen, but thousands of men fit that description. The case remained a terrifying puzzle. Then came one of the most shocking moments in the case. 2 women disappeared on the same day from a busy park. Witnesses said a man named Ted approached them. He asked for help loading a boat onto his car. Neither woman was ever seen again. This brazen crime terrified investigators. The killer was becoming more confident and more dangerous. Finally, a woman reported something unusual. Her boyfriend's name was Ted. He drove a Volkswagen, and sometimes his behavior seemed strange. Her tip was sent to police, but at first it did not seem strong enough. After all, this Ted was a law student. He was polite, educated, and respected. He did not look like a killer. But the investigation was slowly closing in. Police began connecting cases across state lines. The same methods appeared again and again. The same type of victims, the same disappearances, and always the same kind of man. Handsome, friendly, and named Ted. Still, no one could imagine the horrifying truth, because the man they were looking for was living a normal life in plain sight. But soon, one small traffic stop would change everything. A police officer would notice something strange, something hidden inside a car. And that discovery would begin to expose the monster. A monster who had been hiding behind charm and intelligence. A monster who had been walking freely among his victims. And when his name finally reached investigators, the shock would be unbelievable. Because the man they were about to arrest did not look like a killer. But the evidence was about to tell a very different story. The night was quiet when a police officer pulled over a suspicious car. Inside the car was a man who looked calm and confident. That man was Ted Bundy. At first, it seemed like a routine traffic stop, but something about the driver felt strange. The officer decided to search the vehicle. What he found inside was disturbing. There were handcuffs, a crowbar, and a mask. There was also rope and other tools that looked suspicious. Bundy claimed they were normal items, but the officer was not convinced. Bundy was arrested and taken into custody. At first, police still did not know the full truth. They only knew he was a strange suspect. Investigators began digging into his life. What they found was shocking. Bundy had been living a double life for years. He was a law student and political volunteer by day, but at night he became something much darker. Witnesses started identifying him from police lineups. Several people said they had seen him near missing women. Suddenly, the cases from different states began connecting. The puzzle pieces were finally coming together. Police realized they were dealing with a serial killer, and his name was Ted Bundy. The news shocked the entire country. How could a man who looked so normal be responsible for such horror? Courtrooms filled with reporters and curious onlookers. Bundy often represented himself in court. He spoke confidently and even smiled at times. Some people were disturbed by his calm behavior. Others could not believe he was guilty. But the evidence kept growing stronger. Witnesses testified about his methods. Forensic evidence connected him to crime scenes, and survivors described terrifying encounters with him. The truth was becoming impossible to deny. Then, something unbelievable happened. Bundy managed to escape from court custody. The nation watched in shock. A serial killer was now free again. Police launched a massive manhunt. For weeks, no one knew where he was. Then his crimes started again. The fear returned, stronger than ever. But his time as a fugitive would not last forever. Bundy was finally captured again after a traffic stop. This time, security was much stronger. The court trial became one of the most famous in history. Cameras filmed every moment. The world watched as the evidence was presented. One by one, the stories of the victims were heard. Their families sat in silence and grief. Each testimony revealed more about the monster he had been. Finally, the jury reached a verdict. Ted Bundy was found guilty. The court sentenced him to death. Years later, Bundy would confess to many of his crimes. He admitted he had taken the lives of numerous young women. His confession revealed the true extent of his darkness. The final day arrived in January 1989. The world waited as his sentence was carried out. With that moment, one of the most infamous serial killers in history was gone. But the pain he caused did not disappear. Families continued living with the loss of their loved ones. Communities remembered the fear that once filled their streets. The case of Ted Bundy became a warning to the world. Evil does not always look monstrous. Sometimes it wears a friendly smile. Sometimes it speaks with a polite voice. Sometimes it looks just like anyone else. That is what made this story so terrifying. A monster hiding in plain sight. A life filled with lies and dark secrets. And a truth that shocked an entire nation. Today, the story of Ted Bundy remains one of the darkest chapters in true crime history. It reminds us how important it is to pay attention to warning signs and how dangerous charm can sometimes be, because not every smile can be trusted, and sometimes the most terrifying monsters look completely human. Thank you for watching this true crime documentary. If this story shocked you, let us know your thoughts in the comments. What part of this case disturbed you the most? Don't forget to like this video if you found it interesting. Share this video with friends who love true crime stories. Subscribe to the channel for more dark and mysterious cases. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new documentary. Your support helps us continue telling these important stories. Stay safe, stay curious, and always question what you see. And we will see you in the next true crime story.